The most profound deception in human history is not a grand political conspiracy or a sophisticated corporate fraud. It is a silent, internal monologue that keeps us from seeing our own reflection. The psychology of the lie reveals a staggering truth. We are the primary victims of our own dishonesty. We do not lie to ourselves because we are malicious. We lie to ourselves because the human ego is a fragile structure that requires a constant stream of curated data to prevent a total collapse into existential dread. To understand the self-lie is to understand the core mechanism of human survival and the greatest barrier to human sovereignty. At the center of self-deception is cognitive dissonance. When our actions clash with our idealized self-image, the resulting psychological tension is physically painful. If you believe you are a hard worker, but spend the day in a state of paralysis, the gap between your identity and your reality creates a friction that the brain cannot tolerate. To resolve this, the cognitive immune system kicks in. It doesn't change a behavior that would require the agonizing effort discipline. Instead, it changes a narrative. You aren't lazy. You are strategically resting or waiting for the right inspiration. This is the birth of the Rationalization Engine. We are not rational creatures. We are rationalizing creatures. We decide what we want to believe based on comfort and fear, and then we use our high-level intelligence to build a legal case to support that belief. The smarter you are, the more dangerous your self-lies become, because you possess the intellectual firepower to construct more convincing delusions. You aren't just lying. You are building a cathedral of sophisticated excuses that even you eventually believe to be objective truth. This internal architecture is built upon confabulation, the brain's tendency to fabricate stories to justify its subconscious impulses. Neuropsychological studies on split brain patients show that the left hemisphere will invent elaborate, logical reasons for actions taken by the right hemisphere, even when those reasons are demonstrably false. Your brain is a storytelling machine first and a truth-seeking machine second. It prioritizes coherence over correspondence. We inhabit a simulated reality where the ego acts as the lead editor. Every piece of incoming information that contradicts our chosen identity is either deleted, distorted, or generalized until it fits. This is why two people can experience the same event and walk away with two diametrically opposed truths. We are not seeing the world as it is. We are seeing the world as we are. The self-lie is the filter that ensures we never have to confront the raw data of our own inadequacies. From an evolutionary perspective, self-deception is a tactical advantage for social signaling. Robert Trivers, a pioneer in evolutionary biology, famously argued that we lie to ourselves so that we can better lie to others. If you are conscious of your own deception, you will exhibit tells, micro-expressions of guilt, sweating, or vocal tremors. However, if you successfully deceive yourself into believing your own lie, you can project it with the absolute conviction of a saint. In the ancestral environment, the person who could convincingly claim they were brave or loyal gained higher social status and better mating opportunities. We have evolved a blind spot for our own flaws because total self-awareness would make us socially clumsy and plagued by hesitation. We are programmed to be internal defense attorneys for our own egos. This is why we attribute our successes to our character, but our failures to bad luck. This self-serving attribution bias is the invisible hand that keeps our self-esteem afloat while steering us away from the objective truth. Furthermore, self-deception serves as a social glue. To belong to a tribe, one must often adopt the group's common lies, the myths, taboos, and shared delusions that define the collective. If you admit the truth to yourself, you risk the ultimate evolutionary punishment, exclusion. Therefore, the brain perceives a truth that isolates as a greater threat than a lie that integrates. We deceive ourselves to remain compatible with our environment. The fictive self is not just for your own comfort. It is a passport that allows you to navigate the social landscape without being labeled a heretic or an outcast. In modern psychology, these lies are often categorized as positive illusions. Most people believe they are smarter, more ethical, and better drivers than the average person, a statistical impossibility. While these minor lies act as a psychological buffer against depression, They create a developmental ceiling. If you lie to yourself about your competence, you lose the ability to improve. You become a king of a paper kingdom, ruling over a version of yourself that doesn't exist in reality. The danger arises when a lie moves from the minor to the existential. This is a sunk cost lie, where we tell ourselves a failing relationship or a dead-end career is just about to turn around because we are too afraid to admit we wasted years of our lives. We protect the investment rather than the future. We stay in a burning building because we have convinced ourselves the smoke is just industrial atmosphere. We prefer familiar hell to an unfamiliar heaven because the latter requires us to admit we were wrong. At its extreme, this leads to narcissistic injury. When the gap between the fictive self and objective reality becomes too wide to ignore, the ego reacts with rage. This is the origin of most interpersonal conflict, an attempt to force the outside world to validate the internal lie. We don't want the truth, we want confirmation. We surround ourselves with yes men and curated social media feeds that act as a hall of mirrors, reflecting back the version of ourselves we desperately want to believe in. This is the echo chamber of the self, where the truth goes to die. To the sovereign individual, self-honesty is the highest form of courage. Breaking the cycle of self-deception requires a process of internal interrogation. You must look at the areas of your life where you feel the most offensive, because defensiveness is the primary symptom of a lie being challenged. Where there is anger at a critique, there is usually a hidden truth that the ego is trying to bury. You must move from the defense attorney mindset to the forensic auditor mindset. This means looking at your life as a series of data points rather than a narrative. If you say your priority is health, but your calendar shows 0 hours of movement, the data is the truth and your words are the lie. Sovereignty is the act of aligning your internal map with the external territory. The more accurate your map, the more power you have to navigate the world. This audit requires radical responsibility. You must stop blaming the wind for your direction and start looking at the sails. Every excuse you make is a brick in the wall of your own prison. To be sovereign is to admit that you are the architect of your own current condition. It is a realization that while you cannot control every event, you are the sole author of the meaning assigned to those events. By killing the victim narrative, you reclaim the power to change the story. This is a painful death, but it is the only path to a genuine life. Ultimately, the goal is radical transparency with the self. When you stop lying to yourself, you lose the comfort of the delusion, but you gain the gravity of reality. A person who has faced their own shadow and acknowledged their own failures is impossible to manipulate. You cannot be blackmailed by a truth you have already accepted. You become ungaslightable because your sense of self is anchored in what is, not in what you hope people see. The self-lie is a ghost that haunts the house of your potential. Exorcising requires the brutal honesty that most people only reserve for their enemies. But on the other side of that pain is a profound sense of lightness. You no longer have to spend energy maintaining the fictive self. You can finally direct that energy toward becoming the person you used to pretend to be. True power is not found in the mask. It is found in the face beneath it. As you integrate this truth, you'll find that you speak less and observe more. The need to prove your identity to others vanishes because the internal conflict has been resolved. You move with unified intent. The rationalization engine is silenced, replaced by a quiet, unwavering awareness. You are no longer a passenger in your own mind, being driven by subconscious fears and ancestral biases. You are the pilot. You have reached the apotheosis of the self, the state where your thoughts, words, and actions are in perfect alignment. This is the only true freedom that exists.